Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 202 for the 1st of September 2012. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. Coming up on this week's show, some really, really wonderful skeptics and some good people to boot. Two of my favourite people in the world, Dr Pamela Gay, the wonderful astronomer Dr Pamela Gay, and Dr Harriet Hall, known as the Skepdoc. Now, both these wonderful people were at the amazing meeting where, of course, they spoke to Maynard. I'm beginning to think that everybody at the amazing meeting must have spoken to Maynard at some stage or other. I'm also beginning to think that the man must be twins or triplets. I don't know how on earth he got all these interviews in such a short time, but he did. And we're still enjoying every one of them. And more to come over the weeks to come. It's just incredible. And for those people who might be new to the Skeptic Zone, the only reason Maynard went to the amazing meeting in Las Vegas is because listeners of this show paid for him to go there. Listener power, folks. That's what it's all about. Then coming up after those interviews, I travel to Sydney University, which isn't so far from where I live, sort of down the road a little bit. And I speak to the Young Scientists of Australia. Now, this is an organisation dedicated to outreach and encouraging young people to take up or be involved with science. Very, very worthy cause, I think. Now, some important news that's come to us from our good friends in Melbourne. The Australian Skeptics National Convention, and there's more information coming up later in the show, the tickets are selling out already. Now, I know it's months away, it's at the end of November, but the tickets are selling already. This is a situation where it's not a good idea to sort of wait and think and delay. Get your tickets as soon as you can. Don't miss out. Don't be one of those people who say, oh, if only I bought tickets. Don't miss out. Details about the Australian Skeptics National Convention being held in Melbourne with James Randi and DJ Grothy and Rebecca Watson and a whole heap of other people. Details coming up later in the show. But now it's time for me to leave this recording studio, run downstairs, come to the fridge, have a look inside. I'm going to have a nice glass of creaming soda. While you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's new interview time here, and I've got someone who spends a lot of time looking at the stars, poring over data, or poring over data, depending on how you want to say it. Who have we got here?
I'm Dr Pamela Gay. I'm on the faculty at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville.
Now, what's that university like? Is it a hard-drinking kind of place? Do they have a fantastic sport team?
No, we're actually a fairly small university in the middle of the country in what's often referred to as the flyover zone.
Oh.
We have a lot of good, hard-working kids. Most of them come from the farms or the inner city, and they're just trying to get through school, working full-time jobs, going to college. I couldn't ask for a better group of hard-working kids.
So that means you don't get much light pollution there, do you?
No, actually we don't. We have an oil refinery that takes up one horizon, unfortunately, but we can still see a lot of clear constellations.
And now, remember I spoke to you at TAM Australia, and I think I asked you what was your favourite astronomical object, or what did you like? And you're a bit of a fan of Neptune because of its sort of bluish atmosphere, I believe is caused by the methane. Is that correct?
That is correct, although I have to say, since I had a chance to go to South Africa, I'm partial to the Tarantula Nebula, because it actually looks like a tarantula through a small telescope, and that's just kind of creepy and awesome.
Wow. And is it easy to find in the southern sky?
The Tarantula Nebula is fairly easy to find. It's easy if you have a telescope that has a computer, which I was lucky enough to use. But if you know your bright stars, you can star hop to it. It's bright. It's easy to find.
Now, I was looking. Look, I love watching Discovery Channel stuff on galaxies and things like that, and astronomy, the universe, shows like that. Do you get any airtime on that? Do they ever come along to you and give you a bit of a chat?
I've actually got to be on 3 different episodes of the universe, and I did 1 episode of Nova, but I think everything but my eyeball ended up on the cutting room floor, so that was a bit of sadness.
Oh. And of course, you only get like a 15, 30-second grab at the most, and you've got to explain quite complicated concepts sometimes. So how do you go with that? Because you've obviously studied where more is more if you're writing an essay, and it's the complete opposite of that with a media grab.
The nice thing about being a university professor is I've had lots of students ask me lots of random questions off topic that I've learned how to answer quickly so I could go back where we meant to be going. So I use the same tactic with the news people that I use with students who are asking off topic questions that I still want to answer.
Oh, okay. And what do you reckon is the strangest thing they've asked you? Because like TV has some really weird ideas sometimes. Oh, mind you, you haven't finished this interview yet.
I think talking about the energy involved and the number of atoms in the human body for transporter beams and discussing what would actually happen if you tried to transport someone in terms of the energy necessary to pull apart all the atoms in the human body and then leaving behind vacuum when you removed the human body. Actually doing the calculations was crazy. Yeah,
because you could copy the person to another place, but to get this person to leave this place and go to another place, that's a different concept, isn't it?
Yeah, 3D printing is a much easier thing to do than to actually transport a living, breathing human being wholesale to another place.
Well, I'll stop the project I was working on with that. I had my hollowed-out volcano where I was getting really stuck into that concept. And actually, there we go, I thought I'd bring that again. That's a nice little punctuation thing. You go, well, the rings of Saturn. And that would get your students' attention.
That would work.
Now, the sun, how dense is the sun? Now, it's a hot thing. Frankly, we don't want to go near it. But how dense is it? I was reading that it's only like 100 times more dense than water. Have I been drinking heavily, or is that correct?
It all depends on what depth you're at. If you're near the surface of the sun, it's actually just vapor. But as you go deeper and deeper and deeper, then it gets a lot more than 100 times denser than water. It gets thousands and thousands and thousands. And this is why we're able to have nuclear reactions in the core of the sun. So there's a density, pressure, temperature gradient as you go through the sun, and the further down you go, the more pressure you're going to experience because it's trying to support all that mass that's above you.
And what is the largest star that we know of? Is it, and I hope I get the pronunciation right, is it Betelgeuse or Betelgeuse? Because it looks like Betelgeuse, like Hitchhiker's Guide, but it's not pronounced that way.
Well, it's pronounced either Betelgeuse or Betelgeuse or Betelgeuse, depending on which dictionary you're using. And that's a really nearby giant star that could go supernova in our lifetimes. It's one of the 2 stars most likely to go supernova that we watch. But it's not the biggest star we've seen. There's actually a biggest star we've seen is something that's always a record that's always getting broken. There's a certain physical limit up around 100 times the mass of the sun where material that tries to fall onto the forming star is getting pushed off by light from the forming star at almost the same rate. So there's brief moments where things might be bigger than other things for a few million years, which in cosmology is a brief period in time. But Pistol Star is one of the biggest.
Wow, great name too.
Yeah.
Because, at least it's not XJ37-, because that can be, I know you've got to have that because you're going to run out of names eventually, but numbers just don't do it, do they, really?
No, astronomers are kind of bad about how we name things. We give things names that are letters, numbers, HD, H, you name it, we've probably used it at some point.
Now, look, the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe and Georgia Rabb have both got really, really, really angry with recent movies and their scientific inaccuracies. There's a few we can think of, obviously. What is the one that really annoys you as an astronomer? Like, you're looking at the wrong thing and they're calling it the wrong thing, or the star field's incorrect on the Titanic movie, which I've got to say, that's really nitpicking if you're going, look, the stars weren't doing on the... Okay, fine. Yeah, what's the one that really annoys you that almost had you standing up in the cinema going, this must not stand?
This is such a petty annoyance, but it drives me crazy. I love Iron Man, but Iron Man would get mushed into a million little tiny bits of Iron Man every time he lands high speed. I when I was a little kid building model rockets, made the mistake of launching an earthworm. Earthworms don't have exoskeletons. Earthworms return to Earth in a very bad state. And
because Iron Man doesn't have a sort of a force field thing going on, does he? He just kind of got the suit. There's no force field that's supposedly counteracting gravity, is there?
Right. So Tony Stark, every time he did one of those sudden stops, he wouldn't just complain. He would die brutally. Spine compressed, bones breaking, skin going to mush. Yet he's fine. So apparently conservation of momentum doesn't apply when you have one of those neat little nuclear devices in your chest.
And how do you find TAM here? How many TAMs have you been to? It's an amazing place, Las Vegas. I've got to say, the drinks are really cheap. And in Australia, the cocktail waitress thing, we have that. But it's not. It's natural and overt here. It's like, oh, right, you're dressed like a cocktail waitress. I guess that's because I'm in Las Vegas. It's a bit of adds surrealness to it, doesn't it?
I have to admit, Las Vegas is one of those cities that just leaves me confused. Flying here from Dallas, I'm flying over the canyon lands of America, which are absolutely stunning, absolutely empty, no roads, no trails. And then suddenly you come over a set of weird formations, and there's this giant sprawling plague of buildings. And somehow this whole island of weirdness and anything goes that springs out of the desert gives people a certain freedom that you don't quite encounter anywhere else. And it's just like, but there's so much cool geology near here. No, they'd much rather go to the Luxor and look at the fake pyramid.
And if you could build a fake something, like say it's the Pamela Gay Resort Hotel, and you were going to build something after, a famous asteroid or a great feature or an astronomical feature, what would it be? What shape would your hotel resort be?
So I have to say that when I was a dorky teenager, I attended space camp, and they had these dormitories there that were modeled after like some weird vision of Starfleet Academy or something.
Ooh.
And everything was just kind of NASA bunk bed cross IKEA done with stainless steel. And it was kind of awesome. And I can imagine building a giant space park for people training for suborbital commercial space flight. So if I could somehow be involved in one of those resorts for people getting ready for launch, that would be kind of awesome.
And do you think you have the ticket to go into space? I don't think I could use the space toilet. I don't think I could. They say you're not a real astronaut until you've done that. I don't think I could get it right. And if you get it wrong, everybody pays.
One of the more disturbing things that I realized last year while attending a meeting is folks who go up into space for suborbital space flight are all going to be in spacesuits. There's no bathroom. There is a diaper or other form of waste removal system in the spacesuit. But these are spacesuits that are used for many years by many people.
So, wow, they must have a hell of a great dry cleaner.
That's a 3-day turnaround. I'm just thinking, I don't like using bowling shoes.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I need to be rich enough to buy my own spacesuit before I'm willing to go into space.
Well, even just to wander around Las Vegas, because they've got cooling units in them, and away you go.
Cooling units are great. You can use them for so many different things. You can use them for your spacesuit.
Beer in it. You can be hot, but your beer's cold.
Well, what I love is I met a stormtrooper in the 501st who had got military surplus cooling unit from a jet pilot, and he was nice and cool in his stormtrooper costume.
Oh. Look, let's talk about some anomalies here. Now, on William Shatner's Weird or What, which I think is the go-to program for any factual science you would need, and in fact they recut it for Discovery Channel, so it was just Weird or What without the William Shatner. It just didn't have the same ring to it without his voice. Anyway, and he was inside his house, and of course that was his real house, obviously. He was in. I imagine you watched the show quite a bit.
I have to admit, I don't have that much time for TV that isn't on Hulu.
Okay. Well, he was looking at one of the great theories that these large Earth-sized spaceships are zipping in and out of the sun for some reason. And why would you think that might be? And would anyone not be telling us about it if it was happening?
There's this spacecraft called Solar Dynamic Orbiter, SDO. It's taking 320 gigabytes of data of the sun every single day. There's many, many images per minute being taken of the sun. These things have such high resolution that we've imaged tornadoes of plasma moving across the surface of the sun. We haven't seen these spacecraft. I'm going to say they're not there.
Well, there you go. That's the end of that one, and I'll have a few words to say to Bill when I see him. Actually, is there a theory or an anomaly that people keep bringing up with you that kind of annoys you as a scientist, much the way as homeopathy annoys a lot of doctors?
The idea that there is a large object, whether it be a additional planet, a solar type object, star, brown dwarf, pick your poison, heading towards the Earth on a collision course to hit us in December, bothers me because we're capable of spotting objects 5 miles across at the distance of the planet Pluto. We would have been able to see such an object with normal telescopes and a whole lot of work if it was on a collision course to hit us by then, because it would already be past Jupiter.
What if the planet has an extremely wide orbit, like millions of years or whatever? Would it still be coming and we might not see it?
If it was going to hit us in December, we'd already be able to see it because it would have to be about as close as Jupiter, if not closer.
Oh, okay, yeah, and you're going to notice that.
You're going to notice that.
So why do you think people keep pushing that? Because that's a pretty easy one to disprove. You've done it there in like under 30 seconds. They could use that as a grab on Discovery quite easily. Why don't people... Because, I guess it's people thinking that there's withheld information. I guess that's the problem you've got to...
I don't think most people understand how powerful the average backyard telescope is. The other day I was watching some people react to a video of Saturn being shown through just a backyard 8-inch telescope, and they were like, wow, I didn't know you could see the rings, and they forget that Galileo was working with a 2-inch telescope and he saw the rings of Saturn. When you underestimate the power of a backyard telescope, it's easy to imagine that NASA, which actually doesn't control the telescopes, National Science Foundation does, it's easy to imagine that all these organizations have all these conspiracies going on because they control the information. No, most of the information in terms of asteroids, what's going on with the planets, these things are getting monitored by a bunch of mostly great guys and a few great gals working in their backyards and their driveways and their backfield telescopes. They're the ones who are spotting new storms on Saturn. They're the ones who are spotting the dust storms on Mars. They're the ones who are doing all of this great planetary work. And they have internet, they have Twitter, they have Facebook, and they're not part of NASA. They're not part of the National Science Foundation. And they're going to share anything they find.
Oh, there goes another one. You're blowing away a lot of theories here today. Now, one of the things about your study, your field of study, is it requires a lot of discipline, not just insofar as studying and learning things, but a lot of patience, a lot of sitting around, a lot of sifting through data. Is there something that you wish you had the discipline to do even more as part of your job? Because I would imagine that sometime, you might want to go to bed early or something like that, and you've got to sift through this data.
The great weakness I have is proofreading things. I just want to do the work. I just want to get to the result. I want to share it and present it. But the time necessary to write the journal article that has all of the references to all of the literature, to all the things that people have said in the past, I hate it. I hate it. Footnoting,
hey?
I hate footnoting. It's a required part of science, and if you don't have enough references in your article, it will be rejected. I have learned this.
So it's not like Wikipedia?
No. Sadly, peer review requires you to actually cite who originated the ideas, how the ideas evolved over time, how what you're doing builds on the established ideas. You can't just say, ooh, look shiny. You have to say, ooh, look shiny in context.
Wow. Which is almost it's the direct opposite of the creative process. Because with the creative process, you can build on stuff from the past, but if it works, it works. If it's funny to a certain amount of people, and you don't have to prove why it's funny.
That's unfortunately only true if you work in popular culture. Even academic artists are cursed with having to footnote and describe the intellectual creative legacy of their inspiration and what periods and things influenced their work. There's nothing that takes the art out of art more than reading someone's art master's thesis.
Yeah, whenever I hear the phrase fine arts, I kind of run, because that means, these people are really good at writing essays and backing their stuff up, so I'm not going to get in an argument with them. And scientists are even worse. You guys can argue till the cows come home.
Well, at least we're trying to argue with facts rather than opinion. You can't win when dealing with artists arguing over the shade of green. I walked into that argument once, died laughing, and they couldn't figure out. Well, it's funny when cultures collide. I was literally listening to two art majors argue over how to mix the perfect shade of green. And it was a brilliant thing to watch, and I'm thinking some sort of altered state would have made it even better, but no, I was completely sober, and I just died laughing.
Because that's so subjective, and the way my eye perceives green could even be different physically, let alone what I actually think emotionally about the colour. That kind of,
And yet there are people who this is their academic study, so that's what they do.
Look, the skeptical movement is an outreach movement, trying to get more people involved with it. What do you reckon is the key to getting more people involved? Because whenever I think of science, I think of hard work. I think of quadratics, which I was terrible at school. I think of physics, which physics to me is just really hard maths. I know it has a practical thing. I push the bell, there's some sort of thing going on there. But, the maths to explain that, I really couldn't stay awake for. So how is getting everybody into it going to be a little bit easier? We've got to make it sexy or interesting or really make it compelling for them.
This is actually at the heart of what I do with my career. I work in a field called citizen science. So to give you an example, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is this little tiny spacecraft that's going round and round the moon, and it's taking images at such a high resolution that if your standard basketball player lay down on the surface of the moon and assumed the snow angel position with his arms and legs out, you could actually see him as a speck in the images.
So does that mean we've got all the images of all the Apollo missions, and so we can prove that we went there?
We can see actually the trails left behind by the astronauts, rovers, by their feet as they walked around. We can see the missions themselves where the limbs got left behind.
Is the resolution high enough that you can see the photos that the astronauts left of their families on the moon? I think that's an interesting one because they put them in a sort of a glad wrap mylar bag and put them there, and I imagine they'd still be there. Although the only thing I thought was if it was close to where the blast was from the rocket, they could have been blown away. But yeah, immediately that's what I thought of.
Well, the resolution on these images is about half a meter per pixel, so those are a little bit too small to be seen.
You'll get there.
We'll get there, and especially when we have rovers starting to rove around and re-explore the moon in the future. Now, what's awesome with the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiters, it's returning all this data that we're going to eventually use to figure out where do we want to put communication stations, where are the safe places to build. But there's so much data coming back that the scientists don't have time to handle all the data on their own. So they tried programming computers to do things like identify where craters are, identify where boulder fields are, and we learned that computers are kind of bad at it. Yeah. And so what we've done is we've taken all of these images and we've put them online in a project called Moon Mappers at cosmoquest.org. And we're asking everyday people to help us map the surface of the moon. And we have our first science results coming out next week at the Lunar Forums at NASA Ames, and we're actually previewing that science here at TAM.
Now, explain to me why computers are so bad at mapping. Does it have trouble telling shadow from crater?
The problem with computers is they want everything to be the same all the time. And the moon is made up of 1,000 different shades of gray. And so when you're looking at the surface of the moon...
That's 950 more than the book.
That's 9... Yes, it is. And there's a lot less rope involved. Now, when you look at the moon, you're seeing bits of lava, you're seeing bits of quartz, you're seeing silicas, you're seeing all these different minerals. And when you see something go from gray to white to black, sometimes what you're seeing is a shadow line, sometimes what you're seeing is a difference in composition. And all of that confuses a computer because a crater made in a dark area of soil and a crater made in a light area of soil are going to look different. And then you have shadow angles to deal with because sometimes the sun is straight overhead, sometimes the sun is at a steep angle, depending on the image. All of these different factors lead to computers being maybe very good at finding one size of crater, one type of crater, one type of crater and one type of soil, but they can't understand the diversity of all the different ways craters are shaped. Humans can.
So how do you feel about Hoagland's interpretation of certain moon images as being like ancient civilizations and that kind of thing from some photos that have come back, his interpretation of those photos?
He really needs to get a look at the high-resolution images, because really the moon is volcanoes, craters, fault lines, rocks, a few more craters, and that's really all that's there other than crashed and left behind spacecraft. And there are spacecraft and Russian spacecraft.
Yeah, the Russian one that looks like a really big toilet with the solar thing, that's really amazing.
I wouldn't have put it that way.
It does, because it flips up like that, looks like the toilet seat back.
It's true. I wouldn't have put it that way, but yes, the Russians did build things that flipped open, and I can see why you would say that they looked like toilets.
Look, where can people find out more about what you do and listen to your podcast and get some more of the straight juice? Although I think I probably still will be watching William Shatner's Weird or What. I just got a thing.
I'm a connoisseur of bad science myself, but if you want to hear the good science, you can check out Astronomy Cast at astronomycast.com. And if you want to do science, we have a variety of different projects at cosmoquest.org.
And what's the litmus test for all of us when you think that something's not quite right or something's up in the astronomical world? You know, hang on, that doesn't seem quite right. What's the simple test for it?
Can it be repeated? And if you can't repeat it, because let's face it, sometimes you get lucky and you see a once-in-a-lifetime event, can you explain it using physics of similar things?
Otherwise, it ain't on.
Otherwise, you probably had a glitch in your system.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Harriet Hall. Harriet, what are you a doctor of?
I specialized in family practice, and I was also a flight surgeon in the Air Force.
Well, is there a certain personality with guys that fly fighter planes as opposed to bombers? Are they much more aggressive? Is there a certain different personality with a fighter type?
There's certainly a mythology that there is. They're famous for thinking they can do anything and they're never going to die, and they take risks. I think there's a certain personality that goes for that sort of thing.
And what attracted you to doing flight medicine in the first place?
Well, I was already in the Air Force. I'd done an Air Force internship, and I was in a family practice residency in the Air Force. And a friend of mine had a small plane, and he took me up in it one day and let me take the controls. And I got hooked. I learned to fly and bought my own plane. And then I found out that flight surgeons got to take care of people who flew, and they got to ride along in Air Force airplanes. So I said, great, I can combine two of my passions, medicine and flying. So I did.
And how many G's can you take with that squeezing thing? How good with you?
I've never been tested. Most of my flight time was in helicopters and not doing maneuvers that would cause a lot of G's. I did get to fly some in the FB-111, which is a supersonic aircraft, but we were not allowed to break the sound barrier.
Was that the one with the swing wing?
Yes, it was.
Yes, we had them in Australia as well. I wish I could remember the name of them. The F-111 we called them, but did they have a nickname or anything?
It seems like it did, but I can't remember now what it was. The FB-111 is an F-111 that's fitted with bombs. Okay. So it's the same airplane, but it carries bombs.
Did you ever go to any theatre where there was any actual action, where there was fighting?
No, because back then, I was in during Vietnam, and they wouldn't send women to combat zones. So
it was okay for nurses, but physicians no.
Yes, and I never understood that, because doctors didn't go out on the battlefield. They were working in hospitals in the theater. And I know a nurse who took up a gun and defended her patients when her hospital was attacked in Vietnam. So it didn't make any sense to me that they couldn't send me over there to work in a hospital, but if they wanted to keep me safe, that was all right with me.
And as a doctor, and I get this with a lot of professionals that are deeply involved with various sorts of medicine, what really annoys you in the world of woo and the world of alternative medicine? What's the one that really annoys you the most when you see it?
Well, it's hard to say. I guess maybe homeopathy, because that's the most ridiculous thing of all, the idea that you can dilute everything out of a remedy and have the water remember something that it's supposed to remember is just so completely illogical and stupid. Yes, that annoys me, but I don't think it does much harm. I think most of the harm is in the people who are against vaccines and some of the other areas.
What about bark flower remedies?
They smell good. No. I wrote an article about that on the Science-Based Medicine blog recently. There's not a shred of evidence to support them. It's just total imagination. But there are people who swear by them.
I've tried to say that to one or two girls at work, and they swear by rescue remedy. Now, is rescue remedy a homeopathy thing, or is that a bark? What is that one?
It's a Bach flower remedy. The whole Bach flower system is a sort of a subdivision of homeopathy because the flower essences are highly diluted. And rescue remedy works because placebos work. If you're not feeling well and you take something that you think is going to help you, you're likely to think you feel better.
Now, is there any woo that you kind of subscribe to? Do you ever perhaps have a casual glance at your horoscope? Do you ever take more vitamins when you don't really need to? Is there anything you fall prey to yourself?
Well, the closest I could come is that I used to take a multivitamin for psychotherapy.
Surely LSD or ecstasy would be as effective as that, wouldn't it?
Well, what I mean is that I don't always eat the most healthy foods, so I would take a multivitamin and say, well, now I don't have to worry about it because I got my vitamins, so I can eat things that I shouldn't be eating. But I knew it really wasn't rational. And finally, one day I saw some research that said that postmenopausal women were more likely to have fractures if they took vitamin A, which is in all the multivitamins. So I stopped taking it right then and there.
And how are your bones anyway? Have you had any scans? How are they?
I've had a scan and I'm fine.
Okay. And of course, a word out to everybody there, get your pelvic floor muscle going as early as possible. Is that a good thing for women? Like, should women in their 20s be working on it? The Kegel exercises?
I have never seen any evidence of studies on women who did it in their 20s, so I really can't comment.
And what is the one thing we can do as a preventative thing that's very easy that we overlook all the time that you think, oh, silly people, you should be doing that?
I'll tell you what I overlook, exercise. I'm a couch potato, and I know it would be good for me, but I just can't make myself do it.
Look, I want to say this on this first. I actually bought a pair of Spanx this week for men, and they sort of pull you in a bit like William Shatner. And I think that's kind of cool. But, I'll look good, but I'll still die 5 years early because I'm not exercising. Is just walking around, simple exercising?
Yes, any activity is good. In fact, a lot of the exercise advice now is just do more. Go out and garden, do your housework, walk around the house, take the stairs instead of the elevator, just simple little things. Anything that increases your activity level is on the good side.
And Dr. Harriet Hall, and I can call you a doctor even though you've retired. Is it like the president? I can still call you a doctor afterwards?
Yes.
What makes you shake your fist at the television? I mean, because there's Fox News, there's all sorts of things on CNN. They have their little medicine moment. What's the one that really you throw the foam brick at the television and make your husband angry? And
PBS, the public broadcasting station, puts up all kinds of quack programs that are really infomercials for the people that want to sell their books. And the one that I've been particularly involved with is Dr. Amen. I've written about him for Quack Watch and for the Science-Based Medicine blog. He does these beautiful brain scans, and he gets pretty colored pictures, and he tells people he can see things that are causing their ADHD or their various psychological problems or addiction disorders. He says, look, there's a red spot on the scan. That's where your problem is.
And is he looking at a certain part of the brain? What is he doing?
Well, he's doing a legitimate scan, but he's reading things into them that he has no evidence for, and he's charging people thousands of dollars, and he's telling them the same things that you could have told them without doing the scans.
And how does he allegedly cure them? Is he selling something as well, or has he got some sort of alternative treatment? What's his line?
He pushes a lot of diet supplements that have not been tested and proven.
Okay. And do you think in the psychiatric realm, diet supplements are kind of useful or at the worst harmless, or can they do more damage than that?
Well, there's no evidence for them. There's a lot of claims out there for everything you can think of, and particularly with something like autism, where there isn't a good, simple medical treatment. There are some effective psychological treatments, educational treatments that have been devised, but everybody has jumped on the autism bandwagon, and they're trying to sell this, that, and everything to autistic kids with all kinds of claims.
And if you could, with some sort of magic wand at the amazing meeting here, is there's one thing you could cure, what would that be? There's so many illnesses out there. What would be the one, if you had to pick one? It's very difficult as a doctor because you see them all the time.
Again, it would be really hard to choose. Diabetes would be a good candidate. I won't say cancer because cancer is many different illnesses. There are so many different kinds. But diabetes is a big problem and a growing problem.
Do you think a lot of that is because we aren't exercising or eating too much sugar? Is that it, or is it not as simple as that?
It's not as simple as that, but if people ate right and didn't gain too much weight, it would go a long ways towards cutting the incidence of diabetes down.
And what are you going to be doing here at TAM? What are you up to? You doing some stand-up comedy, some mime? What are you up to?
I'm going to be participating in a workshop on, we call it Dr. Google, about people who Google for medical information.
You're on there with Dr. Harriet. Now, my dad, he's about 83, 85, and he really forced me to go online and get a book for him. There's some American doctor, she has a thing about a liver diet or something. I don't know what her name is, but he forced me to go on and order her book, which was $36 Australian delivered. And he was really concerned about his bilirubin level. Now, if my dad was listening to this, is the bilirubin level in the liver something you should be obsessed with like my dad is, or is it an indicator of something else?
Bilirubin can be a sign of liver disease, but there is a range of normal. And I haven't heard of that diet you're talking about. I don't know what that's a new one for me. I'll have to look that up when I get home.
Oh, yeah, no, Dr. Rachel was into that, going, just tell your dad to exercise a bit more and eat carefully. But, he just wants to know. He's obsessed with his bilirubin level for some reason. None of the other indicators, just that particular one for some reason. But when you're 85, I imagine, your liver would be taking a bit of a knock anyway, wouldn't it?
Yes, and if you do 20 lab tests on a perfectly normal person, one of them will come out outside the normal range just because of the way we determine normal ranges. There's a bell curve, and just like some people are very tall and some people are very short, some people have levels that are at the extremes, but they're still perfectly normal. So just having a lab test show something is meaningless by itself. You have to put it in context with all the other information.
See, because my dad has a hobby, it's called going to the doctor, and because of that, I've gone a bit the other way. Like my dad's hassling me about, is it PSI for the prostate cancer?
The prostate-specific antigen, PSA.
Yeah, and he's hounding me to get that done. I'm not 50 yet, and I'm going, it's okay, Dad, I won't. He hounded me to get a bowel scan, and I went to a specialist, and he went, why are you here? So, yes, because there's no history and that kind of thing in the family. So my dad is, so I'm worried that I won't go to the doctor when I have to.
Well, the PSA is a very useful test, but it's not useful for screening the general population because it picks up a lot of early cancers. It picks up some cancers that would never have developed into anything that would hurt the person, and there are some pretty serious consequences to prostate surgery. And there have been some good studies of this, and some major medical groups have come out and said it does more harm than good to screen the general population. So it's not a good screening test.
And it's also not good to go looking up on Google. I remember when I had a bit of a sinus problem, I had to have an operation to block so there was some blockage there. I looked it up, and of course I thought I had sinus cancer, which is particularly nasty. And I thought for a day or two I was going to die until the ear, nose and throat man said, no, we just do that, that's fine. Dr. Google is a bit dangerous, isn't it?
It certainly is, and that's what our workshop is going to be talking about, and how to find believable information and not fall for all of the misinformation that Dr. Google would like to give you.
Is there one website we could go to? In fact, when I saw, the movie Made in America, which was about autism, they were saying, go to PubMed and look up all these studies and you'll see that mercury is incredibly bad and all these things are this going on. So after the movie, I went to PubMed. And I was very confused because that's designed for doctors. And I rang Dr Rach. I was going, what does this mean? And she said, no, that means the exact opposite of what you think it means. And that's not a good study. This study over here is a good one. So just going to PubMed for the layman is not a good idea. You can end up getting much more confused, can't you?
You certainly can, but one thing you can look for is the Cochrane reviews, which are all listed among all the other things on PubMed. The Cochrane group takes everything that's been published and tries to make sense out of it and come to a conclusion. So they're usually pretty trustworthy.
So apart from dealing with our physician, where is the place on the web we should go to? Is that a website you just spoke about then we should check out?
You should go to Quackwatch, and you should go to Science-Based Medicine.
And where can we engage you in conversation? Are you blogging away there, fighting the good fight?
No, I haven't even joined Facebook, but I do. I write an article.
You have that history. There's all those photos of you from the 70s that we really don't want to see them now.
I write an article on science-based medicine every week, and we have a lot of conversations in the comments there. And I have a website, the skepdoc.info website. I'm also active in the Quackwatch Health Fraud discussion group, so I talk to people a lot in all those places.
And you don't do too many interviews. Has this been okay? I haven't been too weird or anything. Was my shirt okay? It's like a Playboy shirt. I don't think that's is that okay?
That's fine with me.
And
I got in trouble a couple of years ago because I gave a talk on the anti-vaccine movement, and I mentioned Jenny McCarthy, who is a former Playboy, and she's been publicizing that vaccines are dangerous and talking people out of getting vaccinated. So I picked a picture off the internet, and it showed her in a bathing suit, and I got criticized for being sexist.
Well, that's kind of what she does. I quite like the photo of her sitting on the toilet. That's kind of a cute one of her. And tell me, does Jim Carrey still push the anti-vaccination line now he's not going out with her?
I've wondered that myself. I don't know. I haven't heard anything from him since they split up.
Well, look, thank you very much for your time here. I'm going to go upstairs and really enjoy myself. And this is my first time at TAM. What do you think I should look out for?
Just talk to people. There's some fascinating people here. It's great to get to know strangers.
And one last question. I'd like to do a special, the music of TAM. Now, what music do you listen to? I'm not interested in particularly skeptical music, but what's music you think, hey, that gets me in the right mood for being skeptical, or just music you enjoy? Is there something that's right at the top of that list?
When I'm in the car, I listen to country music now. I've come across some hilarious country music songs that I just love, like I Want You to Love Me Like My Dog Does.
What about My Baby Thinks My Tractor's Sexy? That's pretty good.
And there's one that we get a kick out of because it's about a girl in high school going out on a date, and her father is sitting there cleaning his gun and talking to the boy. And he's in there, he says, "It's a daddy thing," and that's what my daughters say about my husband. That's a daddy thing.
So has he gone out and got himself a 12 gauge yet?
Yeah. Oh, he has quite a gun collection. He's a gun enthusiast, but he's never used them on any boyfriends yet. Yet.
Dr. Harriet Hall, thank you very much. Look, have a great time here at TAM, and what's my suggestion? Just yak to people, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Have fun.
Astronomy Cast takes a facts-based journey through the cosmos as it offers listeners weekly discussions on astronomical topics ranging from planets to cosmology. Hosted by Fraser Cain of Universe Today and myself, Dr. Pamela Gay of Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, this show brings the questions of an avid astronomy lover directly to an astronomer. Together, Fraser and I explore what is known and being discovered about the universe around us. Join us each week as we take a facts-based journey through the cosmos at astronomycast.com.
The Australian Skeptics National Convention for 2012 starts on Friday, November the 30th, with a cocktail evening at Melbourne's Immigration Museum, where you can meet and mingle with free and critical thinkers and some of your favourite skeptics. The convention theme is Active Skepticism, Changing for the Better, and continues over the 1st and 2nd at the stunning Spot Theatre at the University of Melbourne. The lineup so far includes James Randi, DJ Grothy, Brian Thompson, Rebecca Watson, Lawrence Leung, Ken Harvey, Rachel Dunlop, Richard Saunders, Adam Van Langenberg, Chrissy Wilson, Lynn Kelly, and many more. A gala dinner will be held on the Saturday night at Melbourne's iconic Arts Centre. For more details and ticketing information, visit www.skeptics.wordpress.com and click on the blue button labelled Convention Details here. You'll find more information on speakers, accommodation, transport, and a photo gallery of the various venues. You can keep up with more details at the Facebook page, curiously labelled Australian Skeptics National Convention 2012, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at AusSkepcon. The Australian Skeptics National Convention 2012. Your chance to meet James Randi. Now, I've come here today to the University of Sydney, and a glorious day. What a beautiful day it is outside. The birds are singing out there in the courtyards. But we've come in here to a lecture room, which is empty, thankfully for us. I've come here to talk... Apart from that truck, yes. That's right. Out the window there. I've come here to talk to the people from the Young Scientists of Australia. We have June, that's good enough? Yeah, thank you. And Charlotte. Hello, Charlotte.
Hi.
Now, Charlotte, let's start with you. You're the Science Liaison Officer for this group, and I met you just the other day at the Australian Museum, where I was there to take part in the Mystery Investigators, a few weeks ago now. And during a little gap between shows, I was wandering around looking at some of the other stands and exhibitions, and there you were. And you were busily making or doing or demonstrating something. What was happening?
What was I making? I was making mathematical flip wallets. That's my own title for them.
Mathematical flip wallets.
If anyone's familiar with the field of topology, an area of maths focusing on surfaces and how they interact. These are those wallets where you can open it up and put a note on top of a piece of ribbon and then close it and open it in the other direction and it's suddenly trapped.
Yes, I've seen those. The kids have them, don't they? Yes,
and there are glasses cases as well.
And you were showing kids how to make them?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. It's nice to show them something which they might be familiar with but don't necessarily know how it works.
That's interesting. So you're here at the university studying science, naturally.
Of course.
What made you interested in joining the Young Scientists of Australia? And more importantly, what's it all about?
The Young Scientists of Australia is an organisation. Our motto is promoting science to the youth of Australia, and to that end we spend a lot of time involved with science camps, holiday science schools, run at universities all around Australia. In my case, I attended a couple of these science camps, one of them the International Science School, run by the School of Physics here at the University of Sydney. And the Young Scientists of Australia were running a socials program. So 2 weeks, running socials all the time. And what they did seemed to be what I was interested in. The cause of promoting science to young people, I find quite an important one, and so I joined, and I haven't looked back.
Well, I can identify with what you're saying absolutely, because that's something, as my listeners know, that's something very dear to my heart, is promoting science and critical thinking to the younger generation. Now, I guess you're more primarily interested in more university students. Would that be right?
Our main intake is from 15-year-olds who attend science camps. Our age range is sort of 14 to 26. So we sort of cover the transition period between school and, I guess, working life. So we really get people when they're starting to think for themselves, I guess, and provide people with opportunities to sort of spread what they know and what they're interested in.
And impart some science and scientific method, because a lot of people get confused. They think science is just a series of facts, where, of course, the heart of science is more how you go about doing things, of course. And I was just hearing just before, you've been involved in this organisation, and you are currently the secretary, but you've been just about everything else, I've been told.
Yeah, I've had almost every title I can possibly get my hands on. Charlotte is actually the last one I haven't done. It's a bit like Roger Federer not getting that final French Open title. So I think Science Liaison's the final frontier.
And what's your background? What gave you the interest?
So I funnily enough, we both went to the same 2 holiday science schools, but we didn't meet there. So I joined after having gone to the first holiday science school when I was 15, when I was in high school. And there were these guys there being the mentors, being the staff, and they were doing some science shows too, and they were called the Young Scientists of Australia. And they were giving out membership forms saying, if you'd like to be with like-minded people, or if you'd like to hear from people who are in university studying science, and if that sort of thing appeals to you, then you should join us. And I did. And the thing that stands out most about science is that it's the most fun field, I think. It's the most enjoyable field in academia. A lot of your listeners would be very aware of the charlatans' claims of of sort of pseudoscience.
Oh, my listeners are very aware of that, I can assure you.
And
absolutely.
The thing I find really interesting is how they like to promote themselves as being very romantic, as being very classical, and being...
Well, yes, I'm interested you should say that, because we have the situation where so often someone will come along saying that they're the maverick. They've got this new science, but the rest of the scientific community don't want you to know, or things to this effect. Now, history has shown us that once in a very great while, these people are actually onto something. But of course, 99.9% of the time, they're either deluded or just charlatans, as you say. That's an interesting aspect.
Well, the danger of that is that they might give off the view to people who may be ignorant, or to children who may not know better, that science is somehow a dull and boring pursuit, that it's all numbers and facts and figures, whereas where pseudoscience likes to hold the property of romance and of enchantment, of things that are beyond the possible, which is completely ridiculous. If anyone knows anything to begin with biology or physics or chemistry, will know that science is the most romantic academic field you can possibly go in. That if you want to see things or want to be bemused or enchanted by the world, then science is the answer.
Well, anybody looking at the recent videos coming back from Mars, it's breathtaking stuff, but it's also
put
interesting.
That next to a magic bracelet thing, and what has that got to
of course, one thing that we've come across in the Australian Skeptics for many, many years is that the people promoting pseudoscience don't have to obey any particular laws of physics, do they? I mean, they can just make things up as they go along to suit them. We see that all the time. Now, this organisation, the Young Scientists of Australia, how far and wide are you spread?
We have branches in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Adelaide at the moment. We've had interest in Canberra, but it's just not big enough to sustain anything as yet.
I think for the moment, Adelaide, Brisbane, Melbourne and Sydney. And if you have a child about 15 years old, 15 to 25, and you live in one of those cities, you're one of the lucky ones.
I think so. Again, as I say, I was very impressed when I happened across your stand, your table there at the Australian Museum. You were having enormous fun.
Definitely.
You were, and you had children surrounding you, actually, all busily making this. Is this one of the... I hate to use these terms, but is this one of the mission statements that you need to get out there and be seen?
I would say definitely. I think having the motto promoting science to the youth of Australia, we definitely have to, definitely getting out there and being seen. Yeah. For me, it's so much fun doing it. I had a setup with a board balanced on 4 eggs.
I stood on that.
Exactly.
And I said, are you sure? I weigh about 90 kilos. And you said, yeah, stand on the eggs. And I thought, this is it. So I stood on and I was just waiting for the... It didn't happen. I was quite amazed.
And when a kid stands on that, and you see the look on their face when you say there are 4 eggs holding you up, that's just the best.
You look on my face.
Best, or yours, yes, or any of the other exhibitors, actually. Everyone seemed quite impressed with it. Yeah. So it's fun for us, as well as our high and mighty cause or whatever. It's just plain fun. And that's the other thing that YSA offers, I think, is as well as sort of opening up a world of opportunity in science communication and allowing us to sort of promote our views and our causes, it's just a nice place for like-minded people to be. You'd think we'd be a bunch of people who might be classed as nerds at school, but surprisingly, we're actually very socially competent, most of us.
You don't look like nerds to me, people. I must say, you two don't
nerds
look like...
have the most fun anyway.
we sort of offer somewhere both for people who might not, who might be a little too academically inclined to... It's really difficult to phrase this. For people who might be a bit more science interested, we provide a place for people to come out of their shells, or for people to just do their own thing.
School's not always the best place for everyone to feel like they belong.
But we have some real social butterflies as well.
That's true.
We've got a really wide variety of members, which I think is great.
Yeah, and I guess school, as with the world at large anyway, there's always there's a big place for sports people who are great at physical feats. But if you're...
I think we can hear some of them out the window right now, actually, doing their sporting things. Yes.
But if you're particularly in high school, there isn't really an outlet for scientific endeavour. And so if you have a high school child who's quite interested in science but doesn't know where to channel that enthusiasm, then we're sort of there for that niche market.
Well, some of the greatest social gatherings I've ever been to are the mega conventions in the United States based around science and skepticism. In Las Vegas, I go to one every year called the Amazing Meeting. It's got over 1,000 people. As they say, you come to this meeting and spend time with 1,000 of your closest friends. And it's a fantastic time. Everybody has a really great time, apart from the wonderful things we learn. It's the social aspect of it. We call it drinking skeptically. And speaking of which, I was just telling you earlier, before the microphone went on, that we have skeptics in the pub, of course. And I could see the twinkle in your eye, which is in many cities around the world. In fact, many cities around the world have and towns have skeptics in the pub. And the one in Sydney is every month. So I hope that you might come along and have a look, because there's,
Oh, it would be a pleasure to.
Definitely.
I think you'd enjoy it. Now, if people want to know more, young scientists and interested people, especially if you're going to university, where can people go? What's the website people should be looking at?
Our website is ysa.org.au/Sydney. Replace Sydney with your city of interest, if you don't happen to be local here.
I guess if you have children, or if you have friends of children who might be interested in getting their foot in the door in the scientific community, then we're the people for you. Also, if you're a teacher and if you'd like us to visit and show you how fun science can be, as corny as that sounds, then let us know. But there's more of a place for us than ever before, because scientific literacy is something we don't seem to value enough, and I'd hate for people to think that we're somehow political, or we're somehow have a hidden agenda of some sort. When what we're really here for is to expose the scientific community to the youth of Australia, and I think it's
vice versa.
It's incredibly important for us to be scientifically literate for two reasons. One is to see through the bullshit, to really see through what people are trying to know when someone's trying to sell you a vacuum cleaner on radio. Alan Jones loves to bang on about how climate change is a sham, lots of politicians have trouble being just scientifically literate, and I think it's really important for us to sort this mess out. And the second reason is science is science has all the wonder of fiction, all the wonder of fantasy wrapped up in reality. And so if you'd like to see something you haven't seen before, or if you have children who want to explore the world at large, then we're the people for you.
You sound like just the people, absolutely just the people. Well, young scientists of Australia, thank you very much for sparing some time for the Skeptic Zone. And as a little thank you, I'll just reach into my bag over here. And from Australian Skeptics for your organisation, here's a copy of the Great Water Divining DVD. Lots of scientific investigations of strange things on there. I'm sure you'll enjoy looking at some of those documentaries.
Right to the top shelf.
That looks like fun.
Starring the one and only James Randi. I'm sure you'll enjoy that. And I hope people run to your website, check it out. And I really, really am a fan of what you're trying to do, because I do that myself. Outreach, encouraging young people to get interested in science and maybe look for a career in this sort of thing. So, young scientists of Australia, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, this is Brian Dunning from the Skeptoid podcast at Skeptoid.com. For 15 years now, Dr. Bob's Trivia Quiz has been a part of Australian Skeptics. Each month, the mysterious Dr. Bob comes up with questions that defy all logic and reason. Only the best of the best dare attempt to answer these brain twisters, and no, Google won't help you. Visit drbobsquiz.wordpress.com. That's DRBOBS quiz.wordpress.com to take part and to see the complete archive of Dr. Bob's Trivia Quiz. I'm Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. I'll just shut this fridge and go back to the recording studio up the stairs. I hope you enjoyed that episode. That's better. Coming up on next week's show, more interviews from Tam with Maynard, of course. I think Brian Dunning or Ben Radford, or both, one or the other, or both. We'll see. We'll see next week on next week's show. As ever, thank you to all those people who subscribe to the Skeptic Zone, less than $1 a week, or who chip in. And you can do that via visiting www.skepticzone.tv. But for now, until next week's show, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.